It's 10:47 p.m. You're not asleep yet. Maybe you're watching something on television. Maybe you're scrolling through your phone. Maybe you're just lying in the dark, thoughts running, waiting for sleep that isn't coming. You've done this 100 nights, 1,000 nights. It feels harmless. It is harmless. You're just resting. But here is what is happening inside your body at this exact moment. In the blood vessels, in the kidneys, in the arteries feeding your heart and brain, that nobody ever bothered to tell you about. After age 60, the body's relationship with nighttime changes in ways that are quiet, invisible, and genuinely dangerous. Habits that a 40-year-old body handles without consequence become physiological threats in a body that has crossed into its 7th decade. And the most dangerous ones? They don't feel dangerous at all. They feel like nothing. They feel like just another night. I'm Dr. Raymond Okafor. I've spent 24 years as a hypertension specialist working with older adults across the United States. And in this video, I'm going to show you the late-night habits that are silently raising blood pressure in adults over 60. Habits that most seniors do every single night without the slightest awareness of what they're doing to their cardiovascular system while they sleep. After each one, I will give you the specific, research-backed, natural strategies that can reverse what these habits are causing. Not by overhauling your life, but by making small, deliberate changes in the hours between dinner and sleep. Before we go any further, drop a comment with just your age, nothing else. And if you are still awake most nights past 10 p.m., type the words "night owl" in your comment. Because what I am about to share applies differently depending on what your nights actually look like. And for some of you watching this, the information in the next few minutes is genuinely urgent. Habit 1. Eating a late dinner or snacking. After 8 p.m. and what you can do about it. Naturally, let's start here, because this one lives in kitchens across America every single night. The late dinner, the bedtime snack, the handful of crackers at 9:30, the bowl of cereal at 10. It feels harmless. It's just food. You were hungry. But for a body over 60, eating within 2 to 3 hours of sleep triggers a cardiovascular cascade that most people never connect to what they measure at the doctor's office. Here is what happens physiologically. When you eat, your digestive system demands blood. The body redirects circulation to the gut, increasing blood flow to the stomach, intestines, and liver to process what you just consumed. Your heart compensates by working harder. Blood pressure rises temporarily to maintain adequate flow to the rest of the body while digestion is underway. In a 40-year-old, this post-meal blood pressure rise is modest and brief. The cardiovascular system adapts quickly. In a body over 60, 3 things change. First, arterial stiffness. Aging arteries cannot expand and absorb pressure surges the way younger, more elastic arteries can. The pressure rise from digestion hits stiffer walls, and the numbers climb higher. Second, the blood pressure should be falling by now. During the evening hours, healthy blood pressure follows a natural rhythm called dipping, a 10 to 20% decline in pressure that normally occurs as the body prepares for sleep. This nighttime dip is not incidental. It is physiologically critical. It is when the heart rests, when the arterial walls recover, when cardiovascular repair occurs. But late eating disrupts that dip. The digestive demand keeps the cardiovascular system active during the exact window it is supposed to be winding down. Blood pressure that should be falling stays elevated, sometimes for hours. Third, insulin and sodium retention. A late meal, especially one containing refined carbohydrates or sodium, triggers an insulin surge that signals the kidneys to retain sodium. Sodium holds water, and extra fluid volume directly raises blood pressure. This effect peaks during sleep, when the body is horizontal, when the kidneys are quietly processing the evening's intake, and when elevated pressure has nowhere to hide. I once cared for a patient named Walter, 73 years old, from Alabama, a retired high school coach. His daytime blood pressure readings were consistently acceptable, but his doctor noticed something on a 24-hour ambulatory monitor, a device that measures blood pressure every 30 minutes throughout the day and night. Walter's pressure was fine at 6 p.m., but between midnight and 4 a.m., it was running 20 to 30 points higher than it should be. When I asked about his evening habits, the answer came immediately. He ate dinner at 8:30 most nights, always something substantial, and he usually had a bowl of cereal while watching the late news. His nighttime hypertension was almost entirely driven by his eating schedule. We moved his dinner to 6 p.m. We eliminated the late snack. Within 6 weeks, his overnight blood pressure had normalized. No new medication, no dramatic lifestyle overhaul, just timing. Natural strategies for late eating and nighttime blood pressure. First, establish a kitchen close time. Choose a time, 7 p.m. is ideal for most seniors, 7:30 at the latest, and commit to it. After that time, the kitchen is closed, not for water, not for herbal tea, but for food. This single boundary gives the digestive system enough time to complete its primary work before the body's natural dipping cycle begins. Research published in the Journal of the American Heart Association found that adults who finished eating at least 3 hours before sleep had significantly better nighttime blood pressure profiles than those who ate within 2 hours of bed, even when total caloric intake was identical. The food was not the problem. The timing was. Second, front-load your calories. Make breakfast and lunch the larger, more substantial meals of the day. Let dinner be lighter. A smaller evening meal, particularly one lower in sodium and refined carbohydrates, produces a smaller digestive blood pressure surge and a smaller insulin response in the critical pre-sleep window. Soup and salad at dinner instead of a heavy entree. Grilled fish and vegetables instead of pasta and bread. Not deprivation, redistribution. Third, tart cherry juice, 1 hour before sleep. This is specific, and the evidence behind it is genuine. Tart cherry juice contains melatonin and anthocyanins, compounds that reduce vascular inflammation and have been shown in clinical research to lower both systolic and diastolic blood pressure in older adults. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that 2 tablespoons of tart cherry concentrate diluted in water consumed 60 minutes before bed reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 7 points in adults with hypertension, an effect comparable to some first-line medications. Not soda, not juice cocktail. Pure tart cherry concentrate or unsweetened tart cherry juice. Small glass, 1 hour before sleep. Consistently. Fourth, a 10-minute walk after dinner. Not exercise, not a workout, a walk. 10 minutes. Around the block, down the street, in the hallway. Research from the University of Otago confirmed that a short post-dinner walk reduces the post-meal blood pressure spike in older adults more effectively than a single longer walk at any other time of day. The gentle muscle contractions during walking aid vascular blood return, reduce the peripheral resistance that drives pressure up, and accelerate the digestive demand on the cardiovascular system, so the body can begin its dipping cycle earlier. 10 minutes. After dinner, every night. That single habit, repeated consistently over 6 months, can meaningfully shift nighttime blood pressure trajectory. Habit 2. Drinking alcohol in the evening and what you can do about it naturally. This one requires honesty, because many older adults have a complicated relationship with this particular habit. A glass of wine with dinner, a bourbon before bed, a beer while watching the game. For decades, the messaging was mixed. Moderate drinking is good for the heart. Red wine has antioxidants. One drink a day is fine. That messaging has shifted considerably in recent years, and for adults over 60, the cardiovascular picture around alcohol is significantly more concerning than most people have been told. Here is the mechanism. Alcohol is a vasodilator. Within an hour of drinking, blood vessels widen and blood pressure drops slightly. That drop is what makes alcohol feel relaxing. That drop is what generates the heart-healthy studies that measured blood pressure 1 to 2 hours after consumption. But that is not the full story. What happens next is what matters. As alcohol is metabolized, typically 3 to 5 hours after consumption, the initial vasodilation reverses. Blood vessels constrict. The sympathetic nervous system activates. Heart rate increases, and blood pressure rebounds, often rising higher than it was before the first drink. For most people, this rebound happens during sleep. The body is horizontal. The dipping cycle has been disrupted, and blood pressure is spiking in the middle of the night while the person has no idea it's happening. In adults over 60, this rebound is more pronounced for two critical reasons. First, alcohol metabolism slows with age. The liver processes alcohol less efficiently, so the rebound effect arrives later, deeper into the sleep cycle, and lasts longer. Second, aging arteries respond to the constriction signal more dramatically. Stiffer vessels produce larger pressure swings from the same amount of vasoconstriction. This means a single glass of wine at 7 p.m. can be creating a blood pressure spike at 2 a.m. that the person will never measure, never see, and never connect to what they had with dinner. I treated a 68-year-old woman from Florida, Margaret, a retired nurse. She was meticulous about her health, exercise, diet, regular checkups. Her daytime blood pressure was excellent, but she had begun waking frequently between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., often with a slight headache, a feeling of her heart beating harder than it should. She had attributed it to stress, to menopause-related sleep disruption, to age. When I reviewed her 24-hour monitor results, the pattern was unmistakable. A consistent pressure spike between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Every night she had wine with dinner. On the 2 nights she hadn't drunk during the monitoring period, the spike was absent. She stopped the evening wine. The night wakings stopped within 2 weeks. The headaches disappeared. She told me she felt, in her words, 20% younger. That is not small. Natural strategies for alcohol and nighttime blood pressure. First, replace the ritual, not just the drink. For many older adults, the evening drink is not really about alcohol. It is about transition, the signal that the day is done, the permission to relax, the ritual of it. Replacing the glass of wine with something else that carries the same ritual weight removes the habit without creating the void. Options with genuine cardiovascular benefit. Hibiscus tea. Deeply red, slightly tart, with clinical evidence for blood pressure reduction. Warm water with lemon and a small amount of honey. Hydrating, grounding, soothing. Sparkling water in a wine glass with a slice of fruit. The visual and tactile ritual preserved, without the physiological cost. The container matters. The ritual matters. Give the body a replacement that respects what the habit was actually providing. Second, magnesium glycinate, 200 to 400 milligrams before bed. Alcohol depletes magnesium aggressively, and magnesium is the mineral most directly responsible for vascular relaxation, the natural process by which blood vessel walls release tension during the nighttime hours. When magnesium is depleted, blood vessels stay contracted longer. The nighttime pressure dip is blunted. The cardiovascular system cannot achieve the rest it needs. Replenishing magnesium before sleep directly counteracts the vascular tightening that drives nighttime hypertension, whether or not alcohol was the depletion source. A meta-analysis published in Hypertension found that magnesium supplementation reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 4 to 5 points and diastolic by 2 to 3 points, effects that accumulate significantly over time. Magnesium glycinate specifically is the best absorbed form for older adults and the least likely to cause digestive disruption. Third, L-theanine for evening relaxation without the rebound. L-theanine is an amino acid found naturally in green tea. It produces genuine physiological relaxation, reducing cortisol, lowering heart rate, promoting calm without sedation, without any of the vascular rebound effects of alcohol. Multiple clinical trials have shown that L-theanine supplementation in the evening reduces the time to sleep onset, improves sleep quality, and blunts the cortisol spikes that drive nighttime blood pressure elevation. 100 to 200 milligrams, taken 30 to 60 minutes before bed. The relaxation is real. The cardiovascular cost is zero. Habit 3. Sleeping with the television or phone on, and what you can do about it. Naturally, this one lives in almost every bedroom in America. The television murmuring in the background, the phone face up on the nightstand, screen flickering with notifications. The news channel left on because the silence feels too heavy without it. For decades, this felt harmless. Background noise. White noise almost. It is not white noise. Not for a body over 60. Not for a cardiovascular system that depends on darkness and silence to complete its most critical nightly work. Here is the physiology. The human body was engineered over millennia to respond to light as a threat signal. In the dark, melatonin rises, cortisol falls, heart rate slows, and blood pressure begins its natural decline into the dipping zone. But introduce light, even dim light, even the soft glow of a television across the room, and the brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master biological clock, receives a signal. Not sleep, alertness. Not rest, watch. This signal suppresses melatonin production. It keeps cortisol from declining fully. It maintains a low-grade sympathetic activation, a partial fight-or-flight state that keeps the cardiovascular system from fully unwinding. Blood pressure that should be falling stays elevated. For a 35-year-old, the effect of mild light exposure during sleep is manageable. The system compensates. For a body over 60, where melatonin production has already declined by 50 to 80% compared to younger years, where the cardiovascular system's reserve is thinner, this chronic suppression has measurable consequences. A study published in JAMA Internal Medicine followed adults over 60 and found that those who slept in rooms with even moderate light exposure had significantly higher rates of hypertension, obesity, and insulin resistance than those who slept in complete darkness, independent of total sleep duration. Not somewhat higher, significantly higher. And for the phones specifically, it is not just the light, it is the content. Every notification, every news alert, every message that lights up the room at 2 a.m. triggers a cortisol microspike, a brief subconscious arousal response, the body preparing for information it might need to act on. That arousal response raises blood pressure, briefly, but repeatedly, all night, every night. I had a patient, Dennis, 71, from Ohio, a retired engineer who slept with cable news on every night, had done it for 20 years. He told me he couldn't sleep in silence. He needed the background voices to fall asleep. But his ambulatory blood pressure monitor told a different story. His overnight pressure was elevated and showed none of the normal dipping pattern. When I asked about his sleep environment, the television came up immediately. I suggested a trial, 2 weeks of sleeping in complete darkness and silence. He resisted. He tried it anyway. After 14 nights, his overnight blood pressure had dropped noticeably, and he told me he was sleeping more deeply than he had in years. He still keeps the television on downstairs. He just stopped bringing it into his bedroom. That was the change. Only that. Natural strategies for light, screens, and sleep environment. First, make the bedroom completely dark. Not mostly dark, completely dark. Blackout curtains or a blackout shade for the window. Electrical tape over the standby lights on any devices in the room. The television, if it stays in the room, turned fully off at the power strip, not left on standby. The goal is a room dark enough that you genuinely cannot see your hand when held in front of your face. Research from Johns Hopkins found that complete darkness during sleep significantly improved both sleep quality and nighttime blood pressure dipping in adults over 60 compared to those sleeping in rooms with even minimal ambient light. Not dim light, no light. Second, phone outside the bedroom. Every night. This is non-negotiable for cardiovascular health after 60. Not on silent mode, not face down. Outside the room. If you use the phone as an alarm, a $10 battery-operated clock replaces that function entirely. The argument that you need the phone nearby for emergencies is understandable, but the nightly cardiovascular cost of keeping it bedside is compounding silently, every night, year after year. The cortisol microspikes from overnight notifications are not dramatic events. They are small ones, small, repeated, cumulative. That is precisely what makes them dangerous. Third, a deliberate wind-down protocol beginning 60 minutes before bed. The body does not switch from full alertness to deep sleep. It transitions, and that transition, for optimal cardiovascular benefit, needs to be actively supported. 60 minutes before sleep, dim the lights throughout the home. Turn off news and anything with emotional stimulus. Lower the thermostat to between 65 and 68 degrees. Begin slow, deliberate breathing. 30 minutes before sleep. No screens of any kind. Gentle activity only. Reading a physical book, light stretching, a warm shower. A warm shower specifically has been shown in sleep research to accelerate the drop in core body temperature that signals the brain to enter deep sleep mode, and the blood pressure decline that accompanies it. 10 minutes before sleep. Complete darkness. Complete quiet. Or, if silence is genuinely difficult, a sleep-specific audio, brown noise, gentle rain, or a neutral, non-stimulating podcast. Not the news. Not anything that might trigger a cortisol response. Neutral sound only. Habit 4. Taking certain medications or supplements at the wrong time, and what you can do about it naturally. This one surprises people because it sounds like it should be in a medical textbook, not a conversation about evening habits. But after 24 years of treating hypertension in older adults, I can tell you, medication timing is one of the most consistently overlooked drivers of uncontrolled nighttime blood pressure, and it is completely fixable. Here is the core issue. Most blood pressure medications are prescribed once daily. Most seniors take them in the morning with breakfast because that is when they take all their pills. That routine makes intuitive sense, but it may not be serving your cardiovascular system well at night. The peak period of cardiovascular risk, the window when strokes and heart attacks are most common, is the early morning surge, the hours between 6 a.m. and noon, when blood pressure rises sharply as the body awakens. For decades, morning medication dosing was designed to address that morning surge. But research over the past 15 years has revealed a second critical window: nighttime blood pressure. Non-dipping, the failure of blood pressure to decline adequately during sleep, is now recognized as a stronger predictor of cardiovascular events than daytime blood pressure elevation. Stronger. And for many seniors, morning medication dosing provides peak drug coverage during the afternoon when it is least needed, while coverage has faded by midnight when the cardiovascular system is most vulnerable. A landmark Spanish study called the Hygeia chronotherapy trial, one of the largest blood pressure studies ever conducted, followed over 19,000 patients for 6 years. The findings were remarkable. Patients who took their blood pressure medication at bedtime rather than in the morning had a 45% lower risk of major cardiovascular events, heart attack, stroke, heart failure, compared to those who took the same medication in the morning. 45%. Same drug, same dose, different time. Pause on that. This is not a marginal finding. This is potentially the most impactful single change available to many seniors with high blood pressure, and most have never been told about it. I want to be absolutely clear. Do not change your medication timing without speaking with your doctor first. But do bring this to your doctor. Show them this research. Ask the question. Because the conversation you have at your next appointment could change your outcomes significantly. Natural strategies for timing, supplements, and nighttime pressure. First, review every supplement you take in the evening. Several common supplements can elevate blood pressure when taken at night in older adults. Ginseng, energizing, stimulating, can raise nighttime pressure. High-dose B vitamins, particularly B12, can be activating for some individuals. Certain herbal adaptogens, ashwagandha in high doses, can have stimulant effects in some people. Decongestants, even those marketed as non-drowsy or natural, contain compounds that constrict blood vessels and raise pressure directly. Review everything you take after 6 p.m. Bring the full list to your pharmacist. Ask specifically, could any of these be affecting my blood pressure overnight? Your pharmacist is one of the most underutilized resources in healthcare. They know drug and supplement interactions in a level of detail most physicians don't have time to maintain. Use them. Second, potassium in the evening. From food, not supplements. Potassium is the natural counterbalance to sodium in blood pressure regulation. The kidneys use potassium to excrete sodium. More potassium means more sodium cleared. More sodium cleared means lower fluid volume. Lower fluid volume means lower blood pressure. Evening foods rich in potassium. A small baked sweet potato, half an avocado, a banana, a small bowl of lentil soup, a handful of pumpkin seeds. These are not large meals. They are small, strategic additions to the early evening eating window that directly support the kidney's nighttime work of clearing the day's sodium load. Third, beetroot, the nitric oxide activator. This one has strong clinical evidence and is almost never discussed in mainstream health content. Beetroot contains high concentrations of dietary nitrates that the body converts to nitric oxide, the molecule responsible for relaxing and dilating blood vessels. Nitric oxide production declines significantly with age, one of the key reasons older arteries are stiffer and blood pressure is higher. A meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Nutrition found that dietary nitrate supplementation from beetroot juice or beetroot powder reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 4 to 5 points in adults with hypertension. When consumed in the early evening, beetroot's nitric oxide effect aligns with the body's dipping window, directly supporting the vascular relaxation that healthy nighttime blood pressure depends on. 2 tablespoons of beetroot powder in water or a small glass of unsweetened beetroot juice consumed between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. 3 to 4 times per week. Consistent, measurable, natural. Habit 5. High sodium intake in the evening hours, and what you can do about it naturally. Sodium. Most seniors already know this word in relation to blood pressure. Most have been told to reduce it. Most believe they have. But here is what the research consistently reveals. The majority of sodium reduction efforts target the shaker on the table. They eliminate the obvious sources. They cook with less salt. And the numbers barely move. Because up to 75% of dietary sodium does not come from the salt shaker. It comes from processed and packaged foods. Foods that don't taste particularly salty, but contain extraordinary amounts of hidden sodium. And when those foods are consumed in the evening, the physiological timing makes the problem significantly worse. Here is why timing matters specifically. Her nighttime blood pressure improved within 3 weeks. One habit, one change, measurable results. Natural strategies for evening sodium and blood pressure. First, read labels for anything consumed after 6 p.m. Every packaged item you eat in the late afternoon and evening deserves a label check. Anything above 200 milligrams of sodium per serving in the evening window is worth reconsidering. The particular villains to watch: canned soups, often 700 to 1,100 milligrams per serving. Crackers and chips, deceptively salty per portion. Deli meats, even low-sodium versions, often exceed 400 milligrams per 2 slices. Condiments, ketchup, soy sauce, salad dressings. Pickled foods, while healthy in some respects, carry significant sodium loads. Frozen meals, including healthy branded options. This is not about elimination. It is about the evening specifically. What you eat before 2 p.m., your body handles differently. What you eat after 7 p.m., your arteries feel at midnight. Second, celery, specifically in the evening. This sounds almost laughably simple. The evidence is not. Celery contains a compound called 3N-butyl phthalate, or 3NB, a natural compound shown in both animal studies and preliminary human trials to lower blood pressure through relaxation of arterial smooth muscle. Celery also contains natural phthalides that support a reduction in stress hormone levels, the same hormones that constrict blood vessels at night. Traditional Chinese medicine has used celery for blood pressure management for centuries. Modern research is beginning to understand why. 4 stalks of celery in the early evening, as a snack, in a salad, or alongside dinner, provides a meaningful dose of 3NB in the exact window when vascular relaxation is most needed. Third, increase water intake between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m., then taper. This is strategic hydration. Drinking adequate water in the afternoon helps the kidneys clear the day's sodium load before the evening slowdown begins. The goal is to arrive at dinner already well hydrated, so that the kidneys have processed as much of the day's sodium as possible before the body shifts toward its nighttime mode. 6 to 8 glasses of water distributed between waking and 6 p.m. Then, taper. Small sips after 7 p.m., not large glasses that add to the overnight fluid load. Fourth, garlic, raw or aged extract. Garlic contains allicin, a compound that inhibits angiotensin-converting enzyme, the same mechanism targeted by one of the most prescribed classes of blood pressure medication. Multiple randomized controlled trials have found that aged garlic extract reduces systolic blood pressure by an average of 8 to 9 points in adults with hypertension, an effect strong enough to be clinically significant. One small clove of raw garlic with dinner, or a capsule of standardized aged garlic extract taken consistently nightly, provides genuine, measurable vascular protection, not as a replacement for medication, but as a powerful complement to it. Habit 6. Emotional stress or arguments in the evening hours, and what you can do about it naturally. This one lives not in the kitchen, but in the living room, in the bedroom, in the phone call that runs too late, the argument with a spouse that happens right before sleep, the phone conversation with a family member that leaves you wound up and replaying sentences long after you've hung up. The news, domestic, political, financial, consumed at 9, 10, 11 p.m., filling the body with low-grade outrage that it has no physical way to discharge. The worry spiral, the mental replay of the day's frustrations, the lists that start forming in the dark of everything unresolved, everything unfinished, everything uncertain. For a body over 60, emotional arousal in the hours before sleep is not just a sleep quality problem. It is a blood pressure event. Here is the mechanism. Emotional stress, whether acute, like an argument, or chronic, like ongoing financial worry, activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. The HPA axis triggers cortisol release. Cortisol triggers the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system constricts blood vessels, raises heart rate, and elevates blood pressure. In a healthy, younger cardiovascular system, this activation and its blood pressure effects resolve within 30 to 60 minutes once the stressor passes. In a cardiovascular system over 60, with stiffer arteries, with reduced parasympathetic recovery capacity, with cortisol clearance that is slower than it once was, the blood pressure elevation from a 9 p.m. argument can persist well past midnight. And if sleep arrives before the cortisol clears, that elevated pressure accompanies the body through the night. There is no dip. There is no recovery. Just hours of elevated pressure in a cardiovascular system that needed rest. I worked with a patient named Ruth, 66 years old, from Georgia, a retired teacher with well-controlled hypertension. Her medications were appropriate, her diet was careful, her daytime pressure was consistently good, but her overnight readings were elevated, and she had been hospitalized once for a blood pressure crisis that arrived without warning in the early morning hours. When I spent real time with her history, a pattern emerged. Ruth and her husband argued regularly after dinner. Old grievances, financial stress from their adult children. Nothing unusual for a long marriage under pressure. But those arguments, almost always occurring between 8 and 10 p.m., were generating cortisol spikes that her aging cardiovascular system could not clear before sleep arrived. We did not address the marriage. We addressed the timing. Any difficult conversation, postponed until morning. No news after 8 p.m. A written worry journal before bed to externalize the cycling thoughts. Her overnight blood pressure profile improved within 4 weeks. Not because the problems disappeared, because they were no longer living in her arteries overnight. Natural strategies for evening stress and cortisol. First, the postponement rule for difficult conversations. Any conversation that is likely to produce emotional arousal, conflict, or unresolved tension, schedule it for morning. Not because the issue doesn't matter, because the body cannot afford to carry that cortisol into sleep. This is not avoidance. This is cardiovascular strategy. Morning cortisol is already higher by design. The body is built to handle emotional challenge in the morning. It is not built to process it at 10 p.m. and then immediately attempt cardiovascular recovery. The postponement rule. Any difficult topic that arises after 7 p.m., this is important and I want to address it fully. Can we talk about it tomorrow morning? Simple. Requires practice. Protects the arteries every single night it is used. Second, a written worry journal, 20 minutes before bed. This technique has genuine clinical evidence behind it from research at Baylor University. The principle? The brain continues processing unresolved concerns through nighttime cortisol activation when those concerns have not been externalized. Writing them down, not to solve them, but simply to acknowledge them and place them outside the mind, has been shown to reduce the physiological stress response during sleep and improve morning cortisol profiles in older adults. 20 minutes. A notebook. Write whatever is cycling. Close the notebook. The problems are still there, but they are on the page now, not in the blood vessels. Third, ashwagandha, specifically KSM-66 extract. This adaptogenic herb has the strongest clinical evidence of any natural compound for reducing cortisol levels in chronic stress. A double-blind, randomized controlled trial published in Medicine found that KSM-66 ashwagandha extract at 300 milligrams twice daily significantly reduced serum cortisol levels, stress and anxiety scores, and blood pressure in adults with chronic stress, compared to placebo. Taken in the late afternoon and early evening, not immediately before bed, KSM-66 supports the body's natural cortisol decline in the hours that matter most for nighttime blood pressure. Fourth, legs up the wall posture, 10 minutes before sleep. This is a restorative yoga position that has been studied specifically for its effect on the autonomic nervous system. Lying on your back, legs extended vertically against the wall for 10 minutes activates the parasympathetic nervous system directly and measurably. Heart rate slows, blood pressure drops, cortisol begins to clear. Research published in the International Journal of Yoga found that 10 minutes of this position before sleep significantly improved heart rate variability, a direct marker of parasympathetic dominance, in older adults with elevated stress levels. It costs nothing. It requires only a wall and a floor, and it directly counteracts the cortisol that the day's final hours deposited in your system. Habit 7. Inconsistent or insufficient sleep, night after night, and what you can do about it naturally. This is the last habit, and in many ways, it is the one that holds all the others together. Because poor sleep is not just a consequence of the habits listed above. It is itself a habit, a pattern, a chronic condition that most seniors have normalized so completely that they no longer recognize it as a problem. You go to bed at different times every night. You wake at different times every morning. You average 5 or 6 hours and tell yourself it is enough because you have been managing on it for years. You lie awake for 45 minutes before sleep arrives. You wake at 3 a.m. with thoughts that won't quiet. You use sleep aids, prescribed or over-the-counter, that produce sleep, but not the right kind. And morning comes, and you are not restored. You are just no longer in the dark. For a body over 60, chronic sleep insufficiency is one of the strongest modifiable risk factors for hypertension ever identified. The mechanism is direct and well established. During adequate deep sleep, particularly during the slow wave stages, blood pressure drops into the dipping zone. The heart rests. The arterial walls recover from the day's pressure load. The kidneys process fluid without the competing demands of waking physiology. This is not rest in a general sense. This is repair. Active, measurable cardiovascular repair. When sleep is insufficient, when the dipping window is shortened, fragmented, or never fully achieved, that repair does not happen. The heart and arteries carry the cumulative damage of the previous night, and the night before, and the night before that, forward into each new day. The research is unambiguous. Adults who sleep fewer than 6 hours per night consistently have significantly higher rates of hypertension than those who sleep 7 to 8 hours, independent of diet, exercise, and other lifestyle factors. And adults over 60 who sleep poorly show accelerated arterial stiffness, the same biological change that makes blood pressure harder to control, at a measurably faster rate than those who sleep adequately. Poor sleep is not a symptom of high blood pressure. It is a cause, and it is treatable. Natural strategies for sleep quality and nighttime blood pressure recovery. First, a fixed wake time. This is the anchor. Most sleep advice focuses on bedtime. The research says something different. Your wake time is the anchor that sets your entire circadian rhythm. When wake time is consistent, sleep drive accumulates predictably. Melatonin rises on schedule, and the body arrives at the sleep window genuinely prepared for deep sleep. When wake time is variable, sleeping in on weekends, rising at different hours, napping to compensate for poor nights, the circadian anchor shifts daily. The sleep drive is irregular, and the quality of sleep is compromised regardless of total hours. Set a wake time. Set an alarm if necessary. The extended exhale activates the vagus nerve, the primary pathway of the parasympathetic system, producing a measurable drop in heart rate and blood pressure within 3 to 4 breath cycles. Done lying in bed, lights out, for 4 to 6 repetitions. This technique consistently reduces the time to sleep onset in older adults with nighttime cardiovascular activation. No equipment, no cost, measurable physiological effect. Every single night. Fourth, cool the bedroom deliberately. The body's core temperature must drop to enter and maintain deep sleep. Most American bedrooms are too warm for optimal sleep. Research from the National Sleep Foundation identifies 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit as the optimal range for deep sleep in adults over 60. Every degree warmer than that reduces the proportion of slow-wave sleep and shortens the blood pressure dipping window. A cooler bedroom is not a comfort preference. It is a cardiovascular intervention. Set the thermostat. Use a fan if the thermostat doesn't allow low enough temperatures. Use lighter bedding. The goal? Wake up slightly cool rather than slightly warm. That slight coolness means the body spent the night in the temperature range that supports deep, restorative, blood pressure recovering sleep. Bringing it together, the full picture. Let's step back now, because when you look at these 7 habits together, something important becomes visible. Late eating, evening alcohol, light and screen exposure, medication timing, hidden evening sodium, emotional arousal before sleep, chronic sleep insufficiency. None of these seems dramatic on its own. Each one is easy to rationalize. Each one is easy to continue. But they do not operate in isolation. They stack. Late sodium, plus evening alcohol, plus screen light, plus an argument at 9 p.m., plus 5.5 hours of fragmented sleep. That combination is not adding up to a slightly worse night. That combination is generating the kind of persistent, unmonitored overnight hypertension that does its damage silently. In the coronary arteries, in the cerebral vessels, in the left ventricle wall. Night after night, year after year, until one morning, the damage is no longer silent. But here is what I need you to hold. Every single habit in this video is modifiable. Not one of them requires a prescription. Not one requires suffering. Not one requires a version of your life that you wouldn't recognize. They require awareness. They require deliberate choice. They require respect for what your body needs at night, in ways that the body of 30 years ago simply did not. You are not the same body you were at 40. Your nights deserve different treatment than they received then. Give them that treatment, starting tonight. What to do tonight? Not next week. Pick one habit from this video, just one, that you recognized in yourself. 1. Make a single change tonight. Close the kitchen at 7 p.m. Put the phone outside the bedroom. Replace the wine with hibiscus tea. Set a fixed alarm for tomorrow morning. One change. And then next week, one more. This is not about perfection. It is about direction. And every night you move in the right direction, your arteries do something that will never make the news and will never win an award, but will keep you here, functioning, independent, present for the people who need you. That matters more than you know. Closing. I want to say this clearly. The goal of this video was not to make your nights feel dangerous. Nighttime should be peaceful. It should be restorative. It should be the part of your day when your body earns back what the day cost it. For too many seniors, it isn't. Not because they are careless, but because nobody sat down with them and explained what their body needed after 60, in the hours that matter most, in plain language they could use. That is what I hope this was. Drop the word "tonight" in the comments if you are making a change starting right now. Share this with someone who is always tired in the morning, whose blood pressure numbers confuse their doctor, who has been doing everything right by day and wondering why it isn't enough. Tell them the nights matter. Tell them it is fixable. Tell them to watch this video. Subscribe to this channel, because every week I bring you the research your cardiovascular system deserves to know. In the next video, the 5 morning habits that raise blood pressure before most seniors even pour their first cup of coffee, and the simple changes that can protect the heart before the day has even begun. You'll want to see that one. Until then, protect your nights. Your heart spends every one of them working quietly on your behalf. The least you can do is give it the conditions it needs to do that work well.